Welcome to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation podcast, Preservation Perspectives. I'm Rick Gonzalez, ACHP Vice Chairman. We're celebrating National Historic Preservation Month in May, and we are pleased to have Keena Graham, the Superintendent of the Medgar and Myrlie Evers Home National Monument in Jackson, Mississippi, joining us today. Thanks so much, Superintendent Graham.
Thank you for having me.
My first question is, what is your background and how did you come to be named Superintendent of the Evers Home National Monument?
Well, I grew up in a town called Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and in fact, it's about 3 hours away from Jackson on I-20. And I grew up in the west side of Tuscaloosa, hearing a little bit about the civil rights movement, what went on in days of Jim Crow and segregation. When I went to college, I majored in history and I focused on the antebellum South. And then I moved to Washington, D.C. after graduation and started volunteering for the National Park Service.
Nice.
And my experience with the Park Service led me to go for my master's in public history. I focused on ethnohistory. And I went all around the United States of America and did some research in France and Germany as well. I got back home. I became even more interested in the civil rights movement after a Gilda Lehrman workshop, and it was called Stoning the Road We Trod, and it was about the more modern civil rights movement. I eventually ended up in New Jersey working for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but it kept calling me back home to the Southeast and doing some of the work that I found out my family was involved in the civil rights movement. And so when the Birmingham job came up, I was sad because I couldn't apply because it was only taking applications for people within the National Park Service. But then when this job came open, I was so excited and I immediately applied. And so got interviewed. I was surprised I got interviewed because, you never think that you are up to the level to interpret history like this because it's just so powerful. And so when I was offered the job, I accepted before they could even get the words out of their mouths.
That's awesome. Yes, and ethnohistory, what an interesting career to take on. I'd like to ask you next about Medgar and Myrlie Evers. Could you tell us a little bit about them, please?
Oh, they were wonderful. They were a power couple. Both of them were born in Mississippi. Myrlie, Miss Myrlie, she was born in Vicksburg, and then Medgar was born in Decatur, Mississippi. They met each other at Alcorn State University, which is a historically Black college and university. She says that when she met him, it was the first day, the first hour that she was on campus, and he was in his football uniform. So that was in 1950. In 1951, they got married. She was 8 years younger than he was. And then their lives went on from there. She said from the beginning, he was always passionate about voter rights and education and desegregating public spaces. So from the beginning, that was his passion. They lived in Mound Bayou for a little bit. And, he worked for an insurance company owned by a Black doctor. And then they moved to Jackson, Mississippi in 1956 to the home where the home is located today. And they had 3 children. And so that's where they started really, really ramped up their civil rights involvement, the both of them. It wasn't just him, it was her as well. So whatever petitions he signed on, she signed on as well.
Wonderful. I love the fact that they're a power couple that were focused on this movement too. The Medgar and Myrlie Evers Home National Monument is one of the newest national parks. Why was it important for the home of the civil rights leaders to become part of the national park system?
It's sad to say it, but when you think about the assassinations of civil rights leaders, as well as presidents, Medgar was the first. And it was the first assassination of a major civil rights figure.
Oh, wow.
But not just that. So yes, that is sad history. However, what went on in that house with the planning of boycotts and marches and all sorts of initiatives. Planning the wait-in, that's, sitting down and writing these letters and talking it over with Myrlie, because she even served as his secretary. So there's that work that went on in that house, but then that's the love of a family. So you have a family unit as well. So you still have to take care of the kids. You still have to do the laundry. You still have to iron. You have to do all of these things. And I just think that is so fascinating when you see their home, their ranch style home, 900 square feet in this class Black neighborhood where people are still doing things like walking dogs and what have you, how such a powerful movement was planned out of that space.
Truly amazing. That's really an amazing story to hear. Tell me, what is happening with the house now today? What's going on there?
So what's going on with the house is we're doing all of the, unsexy stuff, which is doing all these assessments to see, structurally what needs to be done. The historic studies, we're doing a collections studies, all of that stuff, so that we can get the house the way, as close as it was to the way it looked, June 1963. Now, some of the issues that we're facing with the house, because it's an old house, 1956, so we have some mold issues, so we have to get that taken care of. And also we've got to get the collections. We need to get the tables, the chairs, the everything else, so that we can replicate that. So that's the unsexy part of it. But then the sexy part of it is we're working on the interpretation. So getting oral histories conducted so that we can glean from those stories and develop education programs and public programming. So we're pretty excited about that. Even, Rena Evers, who's the daughter, she said to me, she says, I want us to be innovative, cutting edge. So, yes, we'll do some of the old school stuff, but we're taking on things like both virtual reality, digital, all of those things to make this place come alive.
Wow, that's exciting. So is there a way for people to get involved in gearing up the new national park?
Yes, so we've been working closely with the National Park Foundation. And so they are allowed to accept donations on behalf of the National Park Service or particular parks. So if people want to donate monetarily, they can donate to the National Park Foundation. And if they want to, and if you're close by, you can be a part of the Friends group. We're going to start that. But hey, Ms. Rena said that she wants us to step into the 21st century. So, we can have stakeholders who are in Australia if they want, and we can meet, talk about the site and what needs to be done and what can be done. Most of all, Ms. Rena said it best. If you really want to help, get the story out about her mom and her dad and what they did, because the story will make them live on.
Beautiful, very beautiful. Now, is the National Monument engaging with the public prior to the opening? Will that be happening?
Yes, in fact, we have a meeting planned in June, a public meeting, and then we're going to have another public meeting planned in October, because we're still trying to put together the themes that we want to focus on in interpreting the site. And then we also have to put together a general management plan. Again, that stuff of, maintenance and, who's going to pay bills and who's going to mow the lawn and the story. So all these other things have to be figured out as well. And we want the public's input.
Beautiful. And let me ask you, why should homes such as this one be preserved?
We need to know that everybody has it within them to make change. It's not just George Washington's home, or where I started my career out at the Custis House, the Robert E. Lee Memorial, where these people have money, these people have political power, they come from the right groups of people. What Medgar and Myrlie Evers show and homes like this show is that people like my grandparents can work together with others, like-minded people, to change the world. Beautiful. What people did in these little homes, in these wonderful little neighborhoods, had an international impact that, you know, we get calls from Germany and France and Australia. So that's what you can, this is why homes like this need to be preserved. People need to know that.
Wow, Keena, what a beautiful story. And my final question for you would be, what can people learn by visiting historic homes like the Medgar and Myrlie Evers Home National Monuments?
Well, what they can learn is how something can inspire someone so much so that they are willing to risk everything for it. What Medgar Evers said, you would think, why would you get involved in something like this? Because you could lose your life, and he knew that. But coming to these homes, this is what they had. They had their family, they had their neighborhood. But also for them, it was worth it so that their children could have lives. For them, if things stayed the status quo, that's not a life for their children or their neighbors or even for themselves. So it was something that they had to do. And so that is what they were losing. So no, they wouldn't have lost a mansion. But as Mrs. Evers said at his funeral, the kids lost their father. She lost a husband. And this country lost a veteran and a citizen. And to see this everyday man and this everyday family where it is just speaks to us, and it needs to be preserved so that you can see it within yourself, the power within yourself.
What great history, and what a great example for all of us, especially in the times that we live now in the United States. Keena, I want to thank you again for being here with us today. And for all of you that have joined us, we'll see you next time on Preservation Perspectives. Thank you all.